Welcome to Said in Stone, an Ozinga podcast, where we converge with industry leaders, our own expert coworkers, and others on what we've made, what we can build on, and the legacy we'll leave behind. Be sure to subscribe to the program on your preferred podcast app, as well as on YouTube, for full video of every conversation. You can also find us on Instagram at saidinstone_podcast. Today's guest is Leise Sandeman, co-founder of Pathways, an AI-enabled platform that's transforming sustainable manufacturing. As you'll hear today, Pathways turns unstructured data into automated real-time reporting on emissions. By significantly reducing manual data collection, Pathways is able to deliver rapid deployment of environmental product declarations, or EPDs. Essentially like a nutrition label for construction products, these EPDs provide information on energy and water usage, carbon footprints, and other environmental impacts. Leise built her business and tech acumen at both Harvard and MIT, eventually partnering with fellow Pathways co-founder Alex Cooper in 2022 to form this exciting digital startup and manufacturing data solution. Here's today's conversation, led by Ozinga CEO Marty Ozinga.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
We've met online, I guess, virtual meetings, but this is the first time in person. And so, Leise, it's great to have you here, and I'm really excited about the interview.
I'm super excited about the conversation, and it's always good to get more than like a little square of a face. For anyone who's pure audio, I'm 6 feet tall, so everyone is always surprised by my height. That's my kind of fun party trick.
Anybody who thinks I'm like some giant is like, oh, you're pretty short. I'm 5'6". So you are in town for a wedding with your co-founder. Not a wedding with your co-founder, but
you know, we are already married through the business,
you have
but
a different kind of
he's in fact getting married to his very wonderful fiancée, Sarah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So I'm here in town to celebrate him, and a good reminder that like the most important thing in what we do is the people we do it with. So I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, that's exciting. Glad you were able to make it. But where are you from? Like what you don't sound like you're from Chicago,
you can certainly hear I didn't grow up in Chicago.
Right.
So I grew up in Copenhagen, Denmark. So Chicago is a little further from home. And then I started my career in London, which is where I picked up the accent.
Okay.
For anyone listening in, might sound a little British. Now I spend most of my time out of New York, which is where me and Alex started Pathways, and all around the US, visiting customers and working with partners.
What was, no pun intended, your pathway, or what was your journey to the US? Why the US?
Yeah, I mean, two different parts to it. One was I knew I wanted to start a company.
Okay.
And knew I wanted to do it in the built environment at the intersection of manufacturing things that impact the real world, right? I'm a real world person. I laugh and I look around and I'm like, most things we live in is the material world.
That sounds like a song.
You know, it is a great song. In fact, I once had a picture of Madonna on our final slides just to underscore the point. This is extra fun because we mostly build softwares, but focused on material world. And then came to the US for my graduate studies, kind of thinking of that as a bit of a launch pad to ideate and figure out exactly what I wanted to build and find great co-founder to do it with, which I was lucky to do both of. So that was my route to US.
Very interesting. And tell me, what is the company now? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so for anyone listening who are in the concrete space or any other material vertical, the simplest way to think of Pathways is we make it much easier to collect your data to get insights about product level emissions. For most of our customers, in the simplest term, that means environmental product declarations, which I call the environmental nutrition facts. But instead of calories and carbohydrates, it's chemicals and carbon. Our core philosophy has really been around collecting and structuring data. So what we're really good at are things like you upload all your PDF invoices and we use AI to scrape and pull the right information from it so that you don't have to have an analyst sitting and summing things up in Excel. Our customer base, I like to say, is anyone who makes a material.
Okay.
Focused on the built environment. But one of our strongest verticals is in cement, the cementitious space, and particularly concrete. So ready-mix concrete is one of the spaces where we see the biggest need for this, and frankly, where the solutions to date are least digitalized. So for anyone who's actually had to create an environmental product declaration, it probably looks something like this. They were told, great, here is an Excel with a bunch of empty spaces. Go find out this data and fill it out and send it back to us. That's the problem we're solving.
And how long would you say that process has been?
The average time for kind of a more traditional approach, whether it be underpinned by a software or not, kind of these more like fill out this Excel, takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months. Why? Because finding this data internally is time consuming, right? I spoke with a 20 plant GM the other week who said, well, I had to spend 40 hours just to kind of do transport distances manually. Really, really painful. The fastest we've gotten a plant live is in 7 days. From signing the contract, getting all of the data and verifying it with a third-party verifier and publishing it.
How do you sort of ensure to the end user ultimately that this is actually like verifiable? Like this is what, whether it's the supplier or the software or the third-party verifier. I mean, in our industry, you know, we're constantly doing submittals, but then something happens, a river floods. We have to call an audible and a material changes, or, you know, and how is one who's on the receiving end knowing that the submittal that had these EPDs, like once a change is made, like that it's all actually, the carbon accounting is actual versus what was theoretical in the submittal?
I'd think of it in the same way as how you actually communicate changes to the mix design. To your customers in general. So what we recommend our users to do is they'll be uploading both when they do a proposal. They're mixed directly into our platform. We got some fancy AI that allows you to just read a mixed document. So again, if you're a smaller producer, that just means you upload the PDF, it reads out and pulls out that information. If you're one of our bigger partners, we're typically just integrated directly into the QC system. So we can pull out that mixed information directly. And what we're then kind of stating is, well, the same information as you would when you're submitting a mix in a bidding process, for example, is in that submittal process, and then you can redo or update that EPD with the actual information.
If something changes, then you can quickly update it and...
It takes like 2 to 3 seconds on our platform to update with new info.
There's still some trust in the system that someone's actually, you know, a lot of times with mixed designs, actually, the code might stay the same, but like a material within the mixed design got swapped out for a different flavor that still doesn't change the mixed design. In a lot of respects, you know, people are just going to need to get used to this idea that you may have to do an actual versus the submittal or so. Anyway, that's just one thing that I wonder about, like just, you know, making sure that there's trust in the system.
No, I mean, and this is all about trust, right? Because this information, I mean, I like to say it's about 2 things. It's about making sure people actually understand what it says, right? For many people opening these documents, and I'm sure many people listening here, it says global warming potential, and then it says a number of kilos of CO2 per ton of concrete. And it is just so arbitrary and difficult to conceive. Is this a high number? Is this a low number? Is it good? How is it contextualized? And like you're saying, well, right now it says X amount of fly ash shortage, delay on the actual project, then it looks different. There is a lot of, this is still relatively new in terms of the practice of submittal versus actuals. And we're certainly thinking through in our own product development, particularly in interactions with quoting and sales software or QC systems. How can we pull in that information, mostly to make it much easier in the workflow for people to do the right things? In my experience, all of our customers want to do the right thing. They want to update the EPD, but you know, you got busy days. You got to catch a delivery. You got to be on site.
One of the things I'm curious about, even for yourself or the business, is, you know, in some respects, it seems like Europe is further down the road than the U.S. on some of these things. Is that true? And how did you decide that, no, the U.S. is a better place to have environmental, climate tech kind of software company right now versus being in Europe?
Yeah, as anyone listening, you can hear I'm European, and I spend a good amount of time out in Europe, so it's certainly a big consideration. There's a few different things on my mind. The first is where do you make the biggest impact?
Okay.
Right? And when we look at the US, we're seeing significant rise in in construction across all kinds of spaces. I mean, commercial, industrials, and we're all paying attention to, and you put out a lot of thinking as well around tariffs and prices and how's that gonna impact construction. But nonetheless, US is one of the biggest markets as we think about the growth of this. That's kind of pure impact here.
Yeah.
The other part is what I often see in Europe is that you have semi-internal teams or really consulting-heavy solutions that have been kind of slowly developed over the last 10, 15 years. Whereas in US, there's a much bigger appetite for pure digital plays, right?
Why do you think that is?
In the sustainability vertical, I think it's particularly because there's just truly a lack of the right resources. So, if I asked you to figure all this out and hire people internally, it would be hard to actually hire enough of the right people fast enough to get this solved. I think the second part is an experience with technology where have more confidence that this can actually solve the problems. Okay. And that combination of willingness to innovate and experience with these kind of technologies, combined with the shortage of talent because it's moved faster in the US, I think creates a really, really good window for kind of doing the type of software we are.
Can you kind of take me back to the beginning a little bit of even starting a company? You mentioned you wanted to start a company, go from being an employee to say, no, I want to start my own thing.
I was just talking with a friend about this the other day, and I think there's a few different pieces to it for me. So in my immediate family, there's not a big entrepreneurial culture. My mom is a psychologist, my dad's an artist. But on my dad's side, if we go kind of one generation back, came out of a line of an 8th generation family business. So had this kind of story and this history on the family side about what does it look like to bring forward a legacy and build something meaningful that lasts. Yeah. And then I started my career in consulting. And I think from the get-go, I kept thinking, well, what's the value of giving the advice versus being the one who actually puts my neck on the line and does the work? Mm-hmm. And I think this inclination to say, well, instead of just saying it, what if I did it? It was really exciting. And then it took a while to kind of gain the confidence when you don't have it kind of present in immediate family. For me, it was about looking to friends and mentors and slowly building up kind of a belief that not only was this something I wanted to do, it's also something you can do. Yeah. As it is with many things, once you've done it, it feels so obvious. I love building. Yeah. And now we are kind of a team. We have many customers, we're building our software, right? It exists. But there was a point where it was me and Alex drawing something out on a whiteboard, and you try to make something out of nothing. Mm-hmm. And it feels magical when suddenly there is something. There
is that early day sort of honeymoon stage of just thinking, imagining, dreaming, right? I would imagine that was a very exciting time.
Yeah, super exciting. But then,
and it's up and to the right from there, right?
It's only better. And I'm sure I'd be curious to kind of your journey into actually taking on the role of leading the family business, because there's this kind of step of what does it look like to kind of want to create something more or push something forward. But ultimately, the funnest time is now, because now there's a team and they are all carriers of our culture at Pathways, and I see them interact with our customers, and the empathy and the curiosity and the creativity. Software engineers, that is way more energizing than kind of the standalone.
Yeah, I find myself with my work, sometimes I'm not even sure where my next burst of energy is going to come from, but then I walk down the hall and I start to bump into this person or talk to this person, and the wheels start turning. And it's just that community aspect of things that really starts to become exciting.
Yeah, it's always, it sounds so basic, but it's always all about the people.
Yeah. And that's how many people are you now?
So we are super slim. We're 8.
Okay. That's a good size, though. How old is the company?
Year and a half.
Oh, I think our company started, it was probably 15 years in, it was still 5 people. So you're on a pretty good growth pace within a year and a half. So how does that happen, really? I mean, 8 people within a year and a half. I mean, for those people who are dreaming about starting a company, what does that even look like?
Yeah, I always think that there is a few different paths to starting a company. In the simplest possible world, there is bootstrapping, which means you build it by yourself and you try to make sure that kind of everything you earn you can cover or
Sure.
all your expenditure you can cover at the same time. And then there is more of a venture-backed. Anyone who's watched Shark Tank will know kind of like a typical model of what that looks like. You get on some money, you sell some of your company, and that funding will kind of like scale your growth. We're in the venture-backed lane.
Okay.
And the rationale behind that is that the technology we are trying to build has some upfront costs. And the other part here is that the speed at which I wanted to make sure we could move as a company fit much neater into kind of the venture-backed perspective.
And what's that process like as far as, you talk about the values that are important to you, and how do you go about getting venture behind your dream?
Yeah, so for anyone who's, and I would say for anyone listening, there's never been a better time to start a company, right?
That's encouraging.
The amount of software that is available now with generative AI to build what you are envisioning. You can go into kind of any of these, what they call vibe coding softwares today, and build a quick prototype, right? And there's nothing better than building a quick prototype and seeing if it's valuable. When we went out to raise funding, my principle and Alex's principle had always been, make sure that there are customers who really want this before we start building a complex product.
That's a simple idea.
It's a simple idea. Make sure people want it before you build it. It's certainly not rocket
but
science.
But important to cover that. Sometimes I think people have a dream and they're just like, I don't care. I'm just plowing ahead with my
exactly.
idea.
And I always say, like, it's not like you come up with an idea. You listen. You listen to your customers, and that is where your solution comes from. And that's as true in the first instance as it is now. Every time we iterate, we build a new feature. It's because our customers want it. They are seeing a problem that we can solve. But on the venture funding side, I mean, that's a little bit of like a Fata Morgana, like how do you get in contact with people who have money? I was really...
what did you call it?
Isn't it called a Fata Morgana? Like when you are in an oasis in a desert and you're seeing like the play of or am I translating something wrong here from Danish?
I think it's a Danish.
I'm just
a mirage,
making up a word. A mirage. A mirage. Okay, so
I learned a new word.
In Danish, this is a Fata Morgana.
I was like, man, I don't want to sound ignorant or stupid here, but I just need to. I learned something new every day.
This happens quite often that I, with confidence, will say a Danish word with an English accent. Fata Morgana.
Fata Morgana.
A mirage.
I'm going to use that.
It's a mirage, guys.
All right.
But I was lucky. I'd been in an environment, particularly during my university, where I'd gotten exposure to a network who could connect me. And then it's a lot of asking of favors, right? Find other founders who've raised money before. The number of messages I wrote to people on LinkedIn, and I was like, I really like what you've started. I like your profile of your company. I've started something myself. Would you speak for 15 minutes with me?
And how was that experience for you? I mean, did you get responses?
So many responses.
Isn't it interesting how when you ask for, people are willing? Just a quick sidebar. When I was in college, I was competing in a business plan competition. We had to come up with a business and have a plan. And in the process, I saw similar, like things that were impressive to me. And the internet, I'm going to date myself, but the internet was just kind of getting started. But through email and websites and stuff, I would start to contact people. And I was impressed that there was people that would return my emails. It was interesting because I think people are at similar stages. They feel like a kinship, and not everybody's going to return your emails. But why not reach out to people and ask for advice that's free?
No, I say this to people all the time. I mean, our first customers that we signed, we did with pure cold outreach. Some of my best mentors came from cold outreach. Right? The easiest way to figure out if someone is willing to speak with you is to ask them. That sounds awfully simple, but
by the way, when I announced the podcast, you sent me a note and just said, "This is great. I love it." And it was like well, do you want to be on it? It's just something,
And I
it's
promise
just
you
one
guys,
thing.
I had no ulterior motives. I was actually just coming to Chicago.
No, I mean, but that's part of the issue is like just a little nudge, get on someone's radar, and who knows what starts to come from it.
No, I couldn't agree more. And it's the creativity that comes when you walk down the hallway to your team members,
Sure.
when you reach out to someone, when you put yourself out there, and also when I love this podcast, and that was what I reached out to say. And I think your first episode was with a local radio host, and I heard a few snippets of it, and I just thought, there's a lot of pieces around our industry that if you're not an insider can feel really unapproachable. You're asking, how do you decide which investors you bring on? I spoke with an investor who said, well, are there even many plants? Just plants, full stop. And I was like, well, where do you think the things around you came from? The table we're sitting at, the chair you're on, the steel in the building you're sitting in. And I think often manufacturing, construction is hidden. It's in sight, but hidden away.
Yeah.
And how do you make it more approachable for people?
Yeah. I mean, I have found personally LinkedIn to be I think that's where we connected. But I mean, the algorithm is it just starts to feed each other things that are subject matter, things that we're all interested in, and so it becomes this little community in a way. It wasn't always like that. It just is a new thing.
No, I mean, we definitely got connected through LinkedIn because
sure.
I thought some of the, knew about Ozinga broadly, but then you see a perspective on, well, what's the thesis of the company? What's the approach? I mean, and the investments you're making in what I call not just sustainability, but future-proofing American industry.
Yeah.
And future-proofing manufacturing, for me, is really inspirational.
Yeah. So going back to like this idea of venture, like you mentioned Shark Tank. It's like, I'll take 50% of your company. I'll take 20, or just like we have this dream and we need capital to get it going, but how do you know what's giving too much and all that kind of stuff?
In venture, you talk about rounds, right? So you think about it like this: you raise a bucket of money, you get your little sack of money to achieve a certain number of milestones. When we raised our pre-seed, which was the first round of capital we brought in, we basically had nothing. Right, we had an idea, we had a few customer contracts, and we had kind of the early skeletons of a product. What we said we wanted to do was we wanted to prove that we could get customers on repeatedly and build a product that was valuable to them. And then we knew, well, if we prove those things out, we're probably going to want to go out and get some more capital to get to the next milestones. And in each of those rounds, you kind of want to keep an eye on the percentages of your company you give up. So if anyone is saying at that point, give up 50% of your company, I mean, they're completely off base. Yeah. It's typically somewhere between 10 and 20%, and then everyone gets diluted. And it varies with a bunch of different conditions. And if you do hardware, your business looks really different. So, I mean, I know you partner with a handful of companies that are innovating from what I'll call a hard science perspective.
Yeah.
They have a different capital strategy than if you're a pure software play like Pathways.
Sure.
But those are some of the kind of guardrails I would think about.
I think that's it. I think that the key there is that you did your homework and you knew that like someone was enough to know that someone wasn't going to take advantage, or you weren't going to give up too much, or someone says, I'll give you $1 million. And it's like, oh, but I have to basically take everything you have.
And all these rights and like they write complicated legal documents. And I mean, one of the things I learned was, well, if someone sends you too long of a document that you don't understand, there's probably something fishy about it. They should be able to explain to me what the different terms mean. I think that's a good principle. The other thing is don't just do the homework, but also run the numbers. Like if you've only spoken with 5 funds, you get a no. I'm like, well, it's typical that you only get 10% of the funds you speak with. And if you want multiple funds on board, that means you've got to be speaking with 50, 60 funds. Yeah. It's not long conversations, but once you do that, you also start picking up on people who are fishy. And then, I mean, it's also just gut feel. Yeah. Right? Like, who do you trust? I'm not in it for the short run. Right. I'm in it for the long run. Like, I'm building...
Long? 8 generations?
No, I mean, the inspiration of, 97 years?
If it is for us, yeah.
It's incredible, right? And like, I think we're probably building Pathways for a model where it's probably unlikely that it's my children who take over it, and it's probably more likely that then you professionalize and you get a different type of CEO in, and that's more typical for software type of business. But the partners who've gotten on board with us now are all manufacturers who think 5-10 years out into the future.
Okay.
And we're planning to be part of their technology stack for that time period.
So another question I have is like, from the time you were pitching it till even now, I know it hasn't been that long, but I mean, it is the sort of business proposition or the idea, does it evolve? Is it evolving, based on, like you said, talking to customers and like a pivot or call an audible or whatever?
I think the most powerful thing we're finding is for our customers, and think about someone like an Ozinga, when you think about the number of plants you have and the number of operation, what we do for customers of that size or partners of that size is we integrate with their data stack. That sounds really fancy. It really means we pull their procurement information and we pull their manufacturing information. So that means how much fuel did you use at a site, how much diesel, how much electricity. This is typically kept in like semi-organized data structures. Okay. The biggest thing we are seeing with our customer base is because we are pulling all that data in and generating the product level footprint, our customers are realizing they can do a lot more with that data. Once it's neatly structured on a product level within our data systems, you can do scenarios on top of it. You can do quoting and sales. You can even look at efficiency across different plants. And when I think about how we are expanding and building pathways, it's really towards that direction of how do we make it even easier for teams to communicate and use product level emission, including some of our customers asking, well, what percentage of this originated in the US? Right, that's something that our information of a life cycle assessment also can tell you.
Yeah.
What is the share of different components for lead documentation, and being able to ask a lot of different questions of the same core data layer is becoming really powerful.
Can we do a quick tutorial on all the acronyms? Just for people who don't know. So you mentioned global warming potential. A lot of times you see that even on the nutritional label, so the EPD. There we go. Why don't you just go to a quick like that? What are the high level sort of nerdy acronyms that tend to be?
Yeah, so let's start with the top one, which is environmental product declaration. That's the one I've repeated a few times in this podcast, which is that nutrition label. What does it say on the nutrition label? Well, the first thing it says on the nutrition label is global warming potential. And that is measured in carbon. So it's basically what is the potential of warming measured in kilos of CO2 per unit of
So even though we're in the US, we're on a metric system.
You can never get away from the metrics. That said, I would say unit conversions is probably one of the biggest pain points our customers who shift to us are relieved to get out of. Because, you buy something from a supplier, it's in one unit, it comes in a different unit. Yeah. Didn't they overshoot one of the moon landings because of unit conversions with the Russians? Units is the bane of everyone's existence.
Yeah.
Then there are the factors on the life cycle assessment that people pay less attention to.
Okay.
So on the nutrition label, it doesn't just say carbon, even though carbon is typically king and the one your customers are asking about.
That does seem like the one that people are immediately thinking about. Like, for instance, we have a 2030 goal to have net zero carbon neutral concrete, whatever the right way to say it is, but that we can make concrete that says zero.
Which is,
on the GWP.
By the way, an incredible goal and something, I think there's many people who are inspired by it, not because it's out of the ordinary, as you said, a bunch of European companies certainly also have these ambitions, but because it is what we need, but it doesn't come easy. Yeah. Right? I saw your post around your new cement facility, huge congratulations.
Thank
there.
You. Yeah.
But all those efforts, it's real capital investments, it's real effort that it requires. You don't get there sleeping. But yes, carbon is what most people are paying attention to. But biodiversity factors, which are the rest of the factors, are incredibly important.
What are those?
So one of the things we found was that if you say eutrophication potential,
if
you say eutrophication potential, then most people out on a plant, they don't know exactly what you're talking about. And neither does the sales team, for good reason. That just means how much algae bloom your product might be contributing to. So in our platform, we've actually converted all of the Latin formal terminology into what is their natural impact. Okay. So algae bloom is one, smog creation is another. You have acidification.
And you said life cycle assessment. LCA is anyone asking for people say, hey, someone asked me for an EPD. Is anyone asking at this point for LCAs, and will they, or what's your point of view on that?
Environmental product declaration is in some ways just a summary of that life cycle assessment.
Okay.
So the complex thing here is kind of one is a PDF you can send and it has that clear summary view. Another one, I would think of the life cycle assessment more as the engine. Life cycle assessment sounds awfully complex. Imagine just your production flow, your input materials, how it was transported to your site, and what you do with it. But
it also includes to the job site too, is right. Yeah. Whereas the global warming potential is basically up to the manufacturing facility where the product is made.
Yeah. So this is where it gets a little nitty gritty. So in Europe, they're now doing what's called cradle to grave. So all the way from your input materials to end of life.
Okay.
In US, we are only focused on until it kind of leaves towards your job site.
Right.
And then we actually do for some customers integrate it into their job site transportation information because again, it makes life much easier for your customers, right? If your customer can get, here is the exact emission footprint of everything we bought from you over this project that lasted 2 years with all the variation of the mixes, cool. Now we don't need to do any more work.
Who are you finding? I mean, if there is sort of a sweet spot of customers, is it the big guys, the big multinationals, or is it like more like you mentioned the smaller guy who hadn't even thought of an EPD and someone just asked him for it? Who are you finding these early days to be sort of the sweet spot for the business?
Our software becomes really valuable when you have more plants, because that's where that data collection, doing it in a more automated, integrated way, just becomes more beneficial, right? Us actually sorting out all this information, structuring it across your plants, integrating with your transport information, that's something we're really good at. The bigger your system is, the more complex it is, the more valuable that is. That said, we have a lot of small producers on our platform. Okay. That's a combination of, we believe this should be available to everyone, a real sense of obligation that it shouldn't be because you are a small producer that you can't get a good and easy solution, but also because a lot of the small producers, it will take them even longer because, if you just have a few plants, the guy who's handling the QC is probably also the guy who will have to handle the data collection and the ordering and the delivery.
Have you found it to be important for your software system to be talking and collaborating with other key software systems in our industry, and what have you discovered from that, and is there anything to talk about that?
Yeah, so one of the most exciting partnerships that we have kicked off in the concrete space is with Command Alkon.
Okay.
And that's really back to this philosophy that it's all about the data and it's all about embedding it into existing workflows.
And for people who don't know, for us, Command Alkon, we have batch plant software, we have dispatch software, and fleet those are sort of the three key things from Command Alkon.
This would mostly sit in Interlink if you think about something like dispatch. Again, think about it in relation to your customer information. What we are building out with Command is the ability to really have this information push out throughout different command systems, so that if you have an EPD, you can then get that attached to your information that goes out to your customers.
Okay, but it would be like actual data that's coming from, say, the batch panel kind of thing?
That's exactly right.
With all the materials are weighed up, measured, you know exactly sort of what's feeding.
That's exactly
and so
the thinking.
that software is talking to your software and then feeding it to the customer.
That's exactly right. So
that seems more verifiable too.
Absolutely right. It's like, well, if you're getting someone who's copying something down on Excel and sending it to you on an email, guess what? They probably did their best effort, but it's not super reliable. If we can take it systematically from the systems that we know people are really paying attention to do right, which is QC and batching, then we can trust it much more. But even more importantly for me is, if someone has already if one of your team members have already put this information into any system, and I don't care which one it is, then I'd rather go to that system than have them double work.
Yeah. And can you speak to AI? I mean, it's everybody's talking about AI, and it just seems like it's a broad range of even what it is. But for your business, what is it doing for you?
So one of the ways I talk a lot about collecting and integrating data in an easy way.
And there's tremendous amounts of data. It's nuts how much data between all these raw material inputs, all the weights. We have thousands of mix designs, and within those mix designs, there's all kinds of different constituents.
Lots of different constituents, lots of different factors that may or may not be important. And often those systems don't necessarily have that data structured perfectly. So one of the things we've, for example, used AI for is if someone wants to run through a mix that they only have in PDF form. Because the large language models are pulling, the biggest difference between machine learning and something that it has generative AI based in it is that it's pulling from a much bigger contextual landscape, which means it can make judgment calls that you can also influence and improve over time. This is particularly important when you think about which factors should you combine in mixes for concrete, right? For the EPDs, the big variation or the huge amount of different admixtures you might be using isn't actually going to make any difference because the impact value of that is the same.
I wonder about a day when the end user starts to, like, say, I want this 4,000 PSI, but I want this kg, this amount of kgs of CO2, and like our customer is sitting there, and then it's just sort of feeding them the appropriate mix design from us.
That's exactly.
And they can put their own submittal together with our stuff.
Yeah, they don't even.
They don't need a submittal from us.
No, they don't even have to do it. They can do that directly on an interface, and they can say, well, this is how many days we need curing the strength, and this is kind of our limits. What is the range of opportunities within this? I think that's certainly one part. I think the other part is, how do you make it easier for people to ask questions of their own data?
Yeah.
So one of the things we are now testing is, well, how can you actually think of a co-pilot or a Gen AI within our data, because we know it's validated.
What for the customer, for say us as a customer, is that stuff that's housed in a particular software, like your own software, and then we're just interfacing like ChatGPT style question and answer kind of thing? Is that how that works? Or
yeah, we would have that all embedded in kind of the Ozinga Pathways instance. So a fully protected platform that only has your data on it, but which is hosted on kind of the Pathways platform. That's how all of our customers interact with their data. Your data or any of our customers' data that's hosted on their platform, on our platform, is fundamentally theirs. They own it. It is their data. Which means with some of our customers, we push it straight back into their system. Now we've organized it, made it really nice, and they're like, hey, actually, you did some really cool organization of all our production data. Could we get that back in so we can play with it in Power BI? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Make an API back the other way, and you can get the neatly organized data that we've structured.
I'm curious about like your point of view, your business model, and tell me if I'm understanding it wrong, but really is around jobs requiring EPDs.
Everything in sustainability and climate is about requirements in some shape or form.
Right.
Because it's, whether it be today's requirements or our belief about future requirements.
But what percentage of the marketplace today, I don't even know if that's available to know, but like, what would you say we are today, and how fast is that building?
So there's a few interesting data points. One of the ones that I found particularly interesting was that NRMCA, so the National Ready Mix Association, published more EPDs in May than they did in all 2024.
Okay, well that says something.
So that's a pretty crazy stat if you think about the headlines we're reading around.
That was my next question. Is this administration change slowed things down? Is it because there's, like you said, headlines that, and I don't know if that's where you're going, but that's a question I think for a lot of people. Is this now tabled for the time being? So
we're not finding within our customer base that the priorities are really shifting, and they're still getting customers who are asking for it. One of the dynamics here is also that if you are let's stay in concrete, if you are a ready-mix concrete plant or precast plant or anyone in this kind of space, you just need one or two jobs that are asking for this, where you might miss out on that deal for it to be worth spending a couple of $1,000 a year to make sure you have this information. Right. The other part is what else can you do with this data? So we're onboarding plants in Houston, Texas, probably not a region where you thought there would be a ton of pressure, because they're finding, well, if we even increase the likelihood of winning a deal by a few percentage points, it's worth that investment.
Yeah, it becomes table stakes at some point. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, we all know the big data centers. You cannot even bid on it.
Yeah.
So if you want to be in any of those, if you want to be in commercial projects, really any bigger industrial projects.
A lot of DOTs are moving in this direction.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of customers on who say, well, we wanted to bid on this port project, and we couldn't if we didn't have it because there's public funding associated with it. That said, I mean, at Pathways, we always thought of ourselves as a manufacturing data digital solution, where the most granular data you are really ever going to need about outputs of your plant is going to be these environmental product declarations, because it's literally everything that goes into your
product. And is the vision bigger than those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and what can you give us a sneak peek into that? Yeah. Or is that secret sauce?
No, it's not. It's not secret sauce. Back to the belief of sharing everything, and then you can test out and get feedback on whether it's working. So some of the big demands we're seeing right now from our customer base is, great, well, we have our real data in here. Can we do scenarios on top of it? What if we did this? What if we changed this supplier part? What if we, especially if you have many plants, what if we shifted things differently for transport or batching to our customer? Could we reduce something? I mean, you think of yourself with your net zero goal. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some big swings, and then there's going to be a lot of, I like to say, there's the silver bullets, and then there's a lot of slivers of silver. In that scenario planning, you can do a lot of that slivers of silver. The other part is other output you might want from that product level data. Where we're seeing ourselves go is every salesperson can interact with this data and ask questions of it directly, like, is this made in America? What part of our supply chain crossed the border? How fast did it get from A to B? Mm-hmm. Right, like what's the timelines we have in this, because we're doing live integrations and pulling live data, and that's becoming really valuable pieces of information, where in some ways the EPDs is just the first workflow on top of product level data.
I've seen you post on LinkedIn a little bit, and you seem to track policy a fair bit. Like, what are you seeing out there, sort of in the policy world, that's driving, moving the needle on this front?
Yeah, state and city level regulation and requirements is what's moving the needle most significantly right now. So one of the components of that is it's becoming more confusing to be a bigger player, because you might be interacting with multiple different pieces of policy, whereas previously that might have become more kind of federally. Like you just said, well, a bunch of DOTs are asking requirements, and their levels about the previously mentioned global warming potential might vary from a private customer asking for something, and suddenly you are thinking, well, what am I benchmarking? What am I comparing against? I'm by no means a policy expert. What I like to put out on LinkedIn is like small pieces of what I'm seeing in a slightly more, I think, digestible way. Some ways, I think, I really admire a lot of the content you've put out on tariffs. How do we just break down some of these terms that seem really confusing, and what is the actual potential impact of something?
One of the things that we're seeing that's of some concern too, Ozinga started as a coal delivery company. We've always been in the delivery business, but we've shifted around based on what product people actually want. And it used to be coal delivery for home heating fuel. People fueled their heated their homes.
That.
Yeah, so people heated their homes with fuel, with coal. But at some point they weren't doing that anymore, so we had to change to something else, and it turned into building materials. And really, for the last 75 years, ready-mix concrete has really been the core business. And in some respects, if you've been doing that for 75 years, it's easy to take for granted that it's just always here and it's like going to be here forever. But one of the things that, we do compete with other building materials, asphalt, wood, steel, paver bricks, and, precast, and there's all kinds of different things that we could be competing with. But one of the things that's fascinating to me is like that there's this new element potentially of the global warming potential or the impact environmentally. I just saw another post today about how Meta is, and Microsoft I think was the first one to be building data centers in wood. And I just get a pit in my stomach about it a little bit.
Should I be buying up forestry now? Or what am I doing here?
Well, it's just a competing building material. And for us, we're just trying to be like as proactive as possible to make sure we're competing as well as possible with these other on every level, certainly from a cost standpoint and efficiency and time. But this is another factor now that we need to compete with these other products because some of these hyperscalers are definitely looking at driving down their emissions, and in this case, the embodied carbon, the Scope 3 emissions. And, wood is something that, we're seeing more and more of, and it's something that you guys will monitor as well, right?
Yep. I mean, we have both wood and steel products on our platform. I remember talking with people who are, I think, a little far removed from the reality of sustainability, who said, well, I mean, isn't concrete just bad? I was like, concrete is our most used building material. It is what lays the foundation of almost every infrastructure and home building project. Everyone deserves safe and good housing. And as we see the advent of climate change, the need for safe, good homes and structures is even more important than ever. The other reality is that changing people's habits of how to build, so changing how general constructors work, how, all the training, I mean, that's super decentralized. I think that is much more difficult than changing how we produce the materials. So, I mean, my whole bet with Pathways is I gotta be part of helping, I like to say, and this is probably because I'm Danish, the buildings, they're like Lego, they're built by bricks and you gotta decarbonize them brick by brick. And my whole philosophy and why I'm building Pathways is, well, we can help be a tiny little piece around the data of making this easier for all different kinds of materials, because we're going to need, your ambitions about having concrete that is net zero, as well as we're going to need a whole host of new types of materials, new insulation materials, things that don't have biodiversity footprints. Maybe they're low in carbon, but then it's bad for other components, water usage, resilience. Ultimately, the best building is one that stands for a really long time, and is very reliable and had a
Sounds
low
like
embodied.
A concrete building.
That is a lot of concrete, but we got to lower that embodied carbon, of course.
Yeah.
Then you look at the other side.
Any other advice to sort of young people thinking about being an entrepreneur or starting a business, or anything else that you'd want to talk about today?
I think the things that have been most powerful for me is this idea of ask for help and give help, and be really honest, right? Like, I mean, we don't always do things perfectly, and a lot of what we ask for is tell us what's not working, tell us what is working, and I think that honesty and that transparency has been really beneficial. And then the best advice is probably to do it. Right? Like, it feels much easier now that I just did it. I was like, well, why did I spend so many years thinking about this?
Like, even this podcast, like we these guys have worked their butts off on getting it to this point, but for a while I was overthinking it because I'm like, well, I don't know who the first guest should be, and I gotta, and it's just you can overthink things. You just gotta, like,
so easy,
shoot, aim later kind of thing.
No, and you just gotta do it. Like we talk about it with. Everyone in our company does a fair bit of, do a bit of cold calling. Sometimes pick up, like, something is difficult or something's not working. Like, and this idea of, like, shortening the time from thought to action is something that I continuously work on. But I do think just, like, is so freeing when you do it, because obviously it's way less difficult and way less hard. And if it is as difficult and hard, then at least you've gotten started with it.
One thing I will say is, like, I'm watching you on LinkedIn. I'm impressed by your level of hustle and grit and just passion for what you do. It comes through, and I think in a lot of respects, for anybody who's looking for sort of a vendor partner, you really want to sort of align yourself with people who have that, for something, because they're going to bring things to you. We're going to bring things to each other that just keep elevating each other's businesses or each other's efforts. And so, I applaud you and sort of doing the impossible. It's an exciting time, it seems. And, I wish you the best, and I'm glad you were able to make it today.
No, thank you so much for having me. It was a real privilege and honor. So
great.
Thank you very
Liza,
much.
Thanks for coming in, and enjoy your weekend in Chicago.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, glad you're here.
Make sure to subscribe to Set in Stone on your preferred podcast app, as well as on YouTube for full video of every conversation. Keep up on our social media and company updates over at ozinga.com.